When at your core, you start to be in alignment with your values. When at your core, you start to really care about sustainability and you start to ask these questions. When at your core, you're modeling respect and integrity and equity and service. Like when you start to create patterns in your life, this is going to overflow into all aspects of your life, okay? And so this is what we call the spheres of influence, because you start asking these questions and you start pushing into being a better leader for your business and organization, right? That's the core of it. It's like, man, how can I scale? How can I grow? What am I doing here, right? And so it starts with the focus point of your organization, your business. But what tends to happen and what will happen is that becomes who you are. Welcome to the Moxie podcast. We are in a series where we are going over the frameworks of the School of Ethical Impact. So the School of Ethical Impact was created in 2021 to be a cohort of sorts, right? There were students that came in. We walked with over 30 students, 30 brands, 30 ideas. Some were in startups, some were completely ideas that are now launched and doing amazing. But me and at that time, my co-founder, Haley Adamski, walked through 12 modules. We had one cohort that was a whole year, one cohort that was 6 months, and it was really intense. It was this high touch school. I do a lot of strategic coaching and leadership and mentorship, and my heartbeat is high touch. I want you to feel and know that I'm accessible and available to you. And that is what you really felt in the School of Ethical Impact. It was a unique time. Will we bring it back? Maybe. I don't know. If you're interested, pop down in the description of the show notes. There's a link. Tell me if you're interested. I'm always curious who would want to pop in and learn more. Now, we get kind of a wide range, or I get a wide range of people interested in the actual material of the School of Ethical Impact, because the School of Ethical Impact was actually created from my heartbeat of being an artisan brand and being a social entrepreneur and working in global spaces and feeling like I had nothing that I could pull from or a community to be a part of. And from the school, it developed a lot of connections, communities, resources. We now have Conscious Collab Weekend, which is coming up in March, where there's, again, a lot of connection with entrepreneurs, not just artisan made or social entrepreneurs, but entrepreneurs in general. And there's tons of resources. So my heartbeat is always connection in that space and to be a support, because for the longest time, I felt like I didn't have support. Also, fun fact, I've never worked in corporate. So I immediately, coming out of college, was an entrepreneur and an executive director. I built my nonprofit when I was in my undergrad at university, and then obviously grew that nonprofit into a global social enterprise throughout all of my education and motherhood and getting married and life and experience. And so there's just a lot of hats I wear that I love to bring into these spaces, especially in Moxie. And this year, just to give you a little bit of a fast forward, this year we have a lot of really cool things we're talking about. Next month, we're talking about conscious collaboration, and then we're going to be talking about mindset, and we're going to go into rhythms and entrepreneurship and social impact. And we're also going to talk about mid-year crisis and what it feels at the middle of the year when we're kind of freaking out. Maybe we've hit goals, maybe we haven't, and how do we reevaluate and kind of set our self forward. August, we're going to be going over specifically nonprofit strategies. I have amazing people on the podcast in August that are just going to give you a lot of tools as you move into the end of the year. And so I'm excited about this platform. A lot is going on here. But to bring us back, this month we're talking about the School of Ethical Impact and the frameworks that were created, because when and if we do start another cohort, which again, I love the high touch, but it is a lot of high touch. But if we do start the cohort again, man, it's just so good. But if we never start the cohort, what I really wanted to make sure is that these frameworks continue to be shared to you guys, continue to be talked about, because they're so good. And foundationally, in my company, Amani Collective, we use these in and out every day, from our 5 P's of sustainability to radically listening to rise leadership. And today we're going to be talking about our spheres of influence. This is going to be a shorter podcast. It's going to be straightforward. But if you weren't able to join us in the weeks before, go take a listen. You can find us both here, wherever you're tuning in from. You can find us on YouTube. YouTube has a lot of different resources as well, seminars and trainings alongside the Moxie podcast. You can also find us here at the Moxie podcast on all different audio streaming platforms. All right. So let's dive in. The spheres of influence, and what I love to kind of talk about here and push forward is, if you are watching YouTube, then you're going to see a little graphic of our spheres of influence. But let me describe it to you a little bit. The spheres of influence, to its core, starts with RISE. And so last week we talked about respect, integrity, service, equity, how you are as a RISE leader. And as a leader, that goes through the lens then of the 5 P's of sustainability. So that's people, profit, purpose, partnerships, and planet, right? So you're going to look through the 5 P's. And then from the 5 P's, when you're asking all of those questions, right? Who am I serving? How am I leveraging profit? What are my partnerships? What's my purpose? What lights me up, right? And how am I affecting the planet? Like, these are questions that we should be asking ourselves in every area of our lives, specifically in our business or our organization, right? Because this truly matters. What is the long-term transformational sustainability of what we're creating? But when you start to do this, when at your core you start to be in alignment with your values, when at your core you start to really care about sustainability and you start to ask these questions, when at your core you're modeling respect and integrity and equity and service, like when you start to create patterns in your life, this is going to overflow into all aspects of your life, okay? And so this is what we call the spheres of influence, because you start asking these questions and you start pushing into being a better leader for your business and organization, right? That's the core of it. It's like, man, how can I scale? How can I grow? What am I doing here, right? And so it starts with the focus point of your organization, your business. But what tends to happen and what will happen is that becomes who you are. You talk about it, you model it, you lead in it, right? So your first spheres of influence in this circle, right? You start with RISE, you look through the 5 P's. Your first sphere is leadership, because that's what you're starting at. How are you being a leader in your business and your organization? How is that overflowing? How are you becoming a better leader for yourself and for the others around you? And again, for generations to come, right? How is that overflowing into that? When you fully encompass all of these aspects of the frameworks we've talked about this month, that leadership becomes who you are. And when that leadership becomes who you are, that is going to influence your business, right? So you have leadership, you have your business and organization, and ultimately we spend a lot of time in our business and our organization, whether you're an executive director or a CEO. And when you're sitting in that, you're in it. And the truth of the matter here is, when you're in your business, no matter what, when you go home, it comes with you. Now, in a different way. I like to say, when you enter your house, right, there should definitely be boundaries and priorities, and you leave your work where it needs to be. Entrepreneurs, we're the worst at this. It seeps into everything that we do, so we need to be a little bit better in that. But what I mean is, your characteristics follow you into your home, right? So who you are as a leader is going to affect your business and your organization, and it then is going to affect your overall lifestyle. So let me give you a kind of a light example. Let's start with environment. So one of our strategic pillars at Amani Collective is obviously environmental sustainability. We have social, spiritual, economic, and environmental. So when we're looking at environmental, we're looking at how are we reducing waste, how are we upcycling, recycling, reusing, how are we being smart with our packaging, and who are we partnering with, what coalition are we coming alongside to partner with that, all these different things. We're looking at it in a lens of how are we protecting the environment and being smart from our material purchasing all the way to when it gets into our consumers' hands. Now, I'm going to ask all these questions about plastic. How are we going plastic free? In 2022, we went 100% plastic free on our exports, which is amazing. We now utilize Katenge, and then from there we resell the Katenge into different shops to bring back revenue into our business. So we see this cyclical kind of effect in a really beautiful way of revenue, as well as encouraging the reusability of fabric, right? And how that can be really amazing in spaces. So we're asking all these questions. Now, then I come to then obviously as I'm asking those questions as a leader, that's obviously going to affect our business because we're going to implement changes like we did in 2022. And then I come to my home. And what do you think tends to happen? Well, I start to look at the Ziplocs, and I start to look at my clothes a little bit differently, and I start to look at my toothbrush, and I start to look at my kids' toys, and I start to question my home and my lifestyle. Now, if you're married, prepare your spouse for this, because the more you push into this and the more you become a leader in a space like this, it should implement and seep into every area of your life. And so this is what happens with the spheres of influence. When we decide we are going to be better in different areas, or we decide we're going to challenge ourselves as leaders in our business and our organization, it most likely is going to then follow into your lifestyle, for better or for worse. So a bad example would be something I tell my team a lot is be careful with who you spend your time with, right? Because you become those people. The top 5 people you spend the most time with is the characteristics, the attitude, the perspective on life that you're going to take on. So if you don't like those people, or there's aspects where they might be negative, or whatever it might be, and you're noticing that, maybe start to hang out with them a little bit less, because what tends to happen is the more you hang out with them, guess what? It influences you as an individual, your leadership, your business, and your lifestyle, right? So this is very simple and 101, but I love to remind people about this because your spheres of influence, leadership, business, lifestyle, those are the 3 spheres of influence, are so key to you as an individual. So I want to pose this question. This is a short and sweet episode, and I would love for you guys a couple things before I pose my question. One, again, if you're joining from YouTube, you've seen the spheres of influence. If you're joining from any of our audio streaming, in the show notes, you can sign up or you can go to a link and we'll get you the graphic of the spheres of influence so you can see that. As well as every week, we send out a weekly wild, so it comes from me, and I share lessons of the year. This year I'm sharing 52 lessons. Every week there's going to be a lesson that comes from the weekly wild. And so go check that out. And all of our brands get encompassed in the weekly wild, from the School of Ethical Impact, Moxie Podcast, Jenny Nuccio. So our educative brands, we like to sit there. So very quick notes of encouragement every Friday if you want to be on that. But go ahead and click down there in the show notes to get the spheres of influence and to understand the different frameworks. And so that will be a little workbook for you to just show you the different frameworks of the school. But my question I'm going to pose to you as we end this time and we end this month. Guys, we already made it through a month of 2024. As we end this month, we're going to be going into a month where we're talking about conscious collaboration. As we end this month, I want to pose the question to you of who do you want to be at the end of the year? If people were going to describe you, what word does that encompass? Is it kindness? Is it compassion? What do you encompass? What is that word? What do you want to be? And how do you want people to perceive you? And go out and do that. And in order to do that, it's going to start with the core of who you are. It's going to start with you as a rise leader. You're going to start asking harder questions. And then that is going to move into your leadership, your business, and your lifestyle. So you have the control. You have the choice to step into spaces, to step into new relationships, to step into new mindsets. It's you. So our biggest challenge and our biggest barrier is ourselves. And if we can get past ourselves, if we can realize the actual dynamic and magical things that can happen, if we can get past our limiting and our limiting belief and the scarcity of that, and we can think a little bit more, a little bit bigger, if we can dream, if we can visualize, really cool things can happen, because you are going to walk confidently. You're going to have self-assurance in that, and you're going to see it happen. But you got to believe in yourself. So I think and know that our biggest barrier is ourself. And so if you can break that barrier if you can be a little bit more confident in yourself, you're going to do some really big things this year. You're going to change yourself from the inside out individually, right? You're going to lead with values, so make sure you know your core values. And you're going to walk into spaces and people are going to gravitate towards you because your energy is so powerful. Trust me on this. So who do you want to, like, what is that one word that encompasses you that you want to be known for? When someone is talking about you to a friend, what word are they using to describe you the most? And go out and do that. Because again, your spheres of influence starts with you as a leader. It's going to affect your business. And then it's overall going to seep in a beautiful way to your lifestyle. And my hope is that with that, you can challenge others around you to be better stewards of resources, to be better stewards of this planet, and to ultimately do a bit more good in this world. Thank you so much for being a part of this community. And as always, Moxie on.